Can I just, by a show of hands, see how many of you know about our organisation, ARC? Just put your hand up. Quite a number, good. So I can fly, hopefully, through these first slides. We have a significant birthday this year. We're 30 years old. It's our third decade come to a close. And I think it's interesting because it takes us back to how we started. And this quote comes from way back in our history when we became a charity under a different name. When we started life, we were support after termination for fetal abnormality. Try fundraising for that charity. It wasn't easy, but it was important we existed because Miles and Manu's predecessors were just really starting to formalize fetal medicine. The technologies of scans was getting better. They were doing more amniocentesis and finding more things. And a lot of clinicians were quite excited about this because they could say to parents, we have the technology, we found the problem, you can have a termination and we'll get you a healthy baby next time. Forget about this. We will get you there next time. And what was overlooked was the emotional and psychological impact of the diagnosis, the difficult decision-making, and ending the pregnancy. So when we came into existence, it was to provide emotional support, but also working with healthcare professionals. We were started as an organisation by a group of bereaved parents and healthcare professionals because, as this quote tells us, the quality of care women and couples have through prenatal diagnosis is crucial in relation to how they live with the experience. We've moved on since the mid-80s. We changed our name in 1998 to ARC, Antenatal Results and Choices, because now we provide non-directive information and support right through screening and diagnosis. We get lots of people calling us when they've had an unexpected result or when they're given a diagnosis. We're there to help them gather what they need to make the decision that's right for them. We will always be associated with providing more long-term psychological and bereavement support to those women who end the pregnancy, because we're the only place to come. For those that have a diagnosis and elect to continue, we work closely and signpost to the many excellent condition-specific groups out there, like the Down Syndrome Association, like SHINE for spina bifida, like SOFT for trisomy 18 and 13, because they're the experts in those conditions. So we'll always perhaps be associated with long-term support for those that end the pregnancy, but we are completely non-directive and very much about the parents being enabled to make the decision that's right for them. We've moved with the times in what we provide too over the years, in that we do a lot more online now. But what I think is also important in relation to the services we offer is that we don't just provide support and information to women and couples, but also work very closely with you. So we do run a program of professional training. We're very conscious that this area of healthcare is challenging. And we feel that we have insight into what some women experience as they go through screening, and we feel honor bound to give that back to you to help us work together to deliver best care. We're also lucky as a small charity, we've only got 4 full-time staff, to punch quite high at policy-making level. So I do sit on the UK National Screening Committee, work closely with the Fetal Anomaly Screening Programme, again, to help them understand what these tests can mean on the ground. And when we audit our services as a charity, you have to audit your services as a charity in order to engage funders. What comes back time and time again are these 3 things, that what the people that contact us value particularly is our independence, not because they don't trust what they're told by you or the healthcare professionals, but just because we're outside all that. They can say what they like to us, they can ask what they like, they can explore what they like in what can be a very sensitive and challenging field. We have what you definitely don't have in practice. We've got almost unlimited time to stay on the phone with someone, to see someone more than once face to face. We see ourselves very much as complementary to what you do. And underpinning all this is support really for the inevitable anxiety that comes with an unexpected test result. And I am going to just go back to what Miles showed earlier to look at the screening timeline once more, because it is interesting over time how much has shifted into the first trimester, which many women welcome, that things are done in the first trimester. But we also have to perhaps be pragmatic and practical about what that means, in that we have to give women an awful lot of information, quite complicated information, at a time when potentially they're just about getting used to the idea of being pregnant, when the hormones are raging around them, when their emotions are off the scale. We're asking them, and it's great, we've helped to look at quite a long and involved booklet before they come and see you, to think through what they might want to do, to come and have a discussion with you at a booking appointment, and then make a nice, neat decision to decide, yes, I want to opt into screening, or no, I don't want to opt into screening. Is it always as simple as that? Do all women read the literature they're sent before the booking appointment religiously from page 1 right through and are ready to discuss their options with you? Does it happen? Probably not always. And that's not for a moment us saying we shouldn't be giving good pre-test information, good pre-test counselling. But we have to be honest about it, that very often it's more the situation like this, where, yes, women and couples will tentatively think about what might happen, but that tends to happen to other people, not us. They, obviously here, even quite light-hearted about it. And it's only when the phone call comes, and obviously now, as Miles said, it wouldn't be that it was described as high risk, but higher chance, does suddenly the reality set in. Suddenly the box is opened that there could be a condition. This could be a very different pregnancy. And it opens the box of whether women want to have invasive diagnostic testing. And however you can say, and I'm sure for Miles and Manu, they would say that when they do an invasive test, they don't feel it's as high as a 1% risk of miscarriage, perhaps much lower than that. But to women, just the nature of the procedure, the invasive nature of the procedure is hard to bear. The idea that they've struggled to become pregnant, so much wanted pregnancy, and suddenly they're lying prone, waiting for this pretty big needle to go either to take some placental tissue or some amniotic fluid. It's not an easy procedure to have. Which means, as Miles said, this non-invasive prenatal testing, this much more sensitive screening for Down syndrome, Edwards syndrome, Patau syndrome, is proving very popular with women. And lots of women are voting with their feet and even borrowing money and maxing out their credit cards to get it in the private sector. But it does come with all the ethical discussion too. And some of you may know we've been quite heavily involved in some of those ethical debates. And it's important that we talk about it. It's important that women are given good, clear, balanced, up-to-date information about the conditions that are being screened for. But I think our slight fear in where the debate is going is that we're tipping into a situation where we're starting to discuss good and bad decisions. And as an organisation, we're really conscious that it's not about that. It's about choice. It's about women and couples being enabled to make the choices that are right for them. Not the choices other people might think are right, but are right for them in their individual circumstances. And it's really important that we keep that in mind. Yes, the debate is healthy, but what we don't want to happen, which we're starting to see on our helpline, is women feeling very reticent to really talk about how they're feeling about a screening result because they feel guilty. I shouldn't be feeling worried because it's only Down syndrome. We don't want women not to want to be honest about how they're experiencing results. And we have to be honest too about the effect of the private sector, how they're selling the test out there. Yes, it's important that the private sector exists to drive on technologies, but there's a lot of very heavy marketing out there that we know if some women don't see you or talk to us can be misleading. There are women still, I think, out there that think this test is as good as Diagnostic, 99%, I'll have it. If they come back positive, they sometimes think, I'm not going to bother going in to book with the NHS and have an invasive test. I'm just going to go and have a termination at BPAS or Mary Stokes. And we know that's happening. So we must make sure that there's good, clear information about this testing. And we're always very conscious, and we talk about it on our helpline, to make sure that women are honest with you as midwives, because often they're quite embarrassed to say they've been into the private sector and get into that situation Miles alluded to of having combined screening, then perhaps having a different result and ending up confused. And we don't want that. So please also feel able to direct women to us to discuss private provision, to make sure they're asking the right questions of providers, because we do have concerns about some of the centres. Well, we know that there was recently someone that called us that where the test was offered in a place that was offering cosmetic surgery, Harmony test on the quiet. Lots of scan clinics that are operating out of mother care shops are offering it. It needs to be in the context of a medical test. There needs to be the ability to get good counselling around it. So do, if need be, direct parents for us for questions about it. But I did want to come away from, I think that the media has been dominated a lot with NIPT, and we can forget that 80% of other diagnoses are not chromosomal. There are other things. They're things that are often picked up on scan. And yes, lots of things happen earlier, but so do lots of things on the second trimester scan. And particularly now, there's so much more in the first trimester. We know lots of women think, well, I've done that screening bit, done that. I can go to this scan, like these two women, two parents. We can get some more pictures, surreptitiously get the smartphone out, take a bit of video. Yes, they know it's a medical test, but that's at the back of their thinking. We're going to see our baby again, and look how the baby's developed. Look what we can see now in terms of the scan. And for most couples, 98% of couples, it will be a fantastic experience. But for a significant minority, it represents where everything changes. And we really can't underestimate the psychological impact of that moment they're told something isn't as expected. And I think these quotes I find quite moving because they do hit the nail on the head in terms of the impact. Particularly the second one where she says, all of a sudden carrying my baby now felt terrifying. Everything's changed at that point. It's so significant. And for a significant number, it will be the beginning of a difficult decision-making process. And again, going back to some of the critics of NIPT that have said, well, this simple testing, this safe testing, is potentially going to give women an easier way to get a diagnosis and have an earlier and therefore easier termination of pregnancy, potentially trivializing termination of pregnancy. In our experience, and I'm fairly confident in yours too, it's never trivial. Women may make the decision more quickly, some may make the decision quite quickly, others will take longer, but it's always painful. It's all in the context of a wanted pregnancy. It's never something a woman imagined she would do. So even if her rational head feels it's the right thing in her circumstances, the emotional side of her is heartbroken. And again, we're in the job of helping to support around the difficult grieving emotions that come out of it. And you may be aware of the booklets we offer at the point of diagnosis, not just because we feel, hopefully, they have sensitive information and can prepare parents for some of the questions they might want to ask and what might be ahead, but also because they exist at all. Because the other point that many women make is that they feel so isolated. This isn't talked about. It's not in their pregnancy magazines when they have a diagnosis. They feel very alone with it. And then with the decision making, we need, going back to choice, to be really robust in making sure we support whatever women decide to do. And I think it's worth bearing in mind when we're thinking about women continuing the pregnancy, that the point they make that decision to continue doesn't mean, okay, that's all fine now, they've made a decision, on they go. They will need support throughout. And you're talking about some women that are going to get a diagnosis in the first trimester. They've got 2/3 of their pregnancy to go, knowing that the outcome is not what they'd expected initially. So they will need carefully coordinated care, and particularly perhaps as they approach birth and know that no longer is this pregnancy something we're thinking about planning for, but actually the baby's going to be here, potentially with a condition that may need intervention soon after birth, and then we are left to look after the baby. So really shoring up care pathways for women continuing a pregnancy, and making sure those that do make the decision to end the pregnancy have all they need. And I know I haven't got time really to go into this. We've done some research in this area. I'm very happy to share the paper with you that we put together, looking in a qualitative way at women's experience. And what came out of it, nothing really unexpected, that it's important for them that they are given the time they need, that the termination takes place in a place that feels right for them. There are no one-size-fits-all here. So again, it's about individualizing care. And just to make the point too, that even if a diagnosis isn't made, going back to earlier screening tests, once there's a possible indication of something being different, it can be very difficult for women and couples to totally put the lid back on the box. So again, that we're mindful that they may have ongoing anxieties throughout the pregnancy. And I'm sure that you're aware that there are those women who don't stop worrying, even as they get close to delivery. Just a shameful plug before I come to the end, that some of the issues we've talked about now we're going to revisit at our conference on March the 12th, and I've got some leaflets with you if you're interested in coming along to that. It's a Monday, March the 12th. And to come to an end, we've developed really a set of principles that we think, if we all do our best to follow them, will mean that women and couples are best served in what can be a difficult journey through screening, and particularly if a diagnosis is made. So for us, it's very much about making sure they receive individualized care, that their concerns are listened to, that the uncertainties that come out of many diagnoses, most diagnoses in fact, are acknowledged, and the distress that brings supported. And there does need to be good psychological support for women who are, and I don't use the word lightly, often in a state of trauma after a prenatal diagnosis. That needs to be available. And of course, the signposting to sources of support. You can do what you can, obviously, but there are good sources of support out there that the parents may benefit from too. And importantly, crucially, I think, that staff working in this area, that are working with parents in distress, are able to access support and training, because it does take it out of you. It doesn't just demand of you professionally, but demands of you on a personal level if you're with couples who do face very difficult times in their pregnancies. And absolutely finally, I would like to give the last word to parents. And I think these two quotes bring home to us the importance of good care. It can't take away the difficult experiences that women have out of prenatal screening and diagnosis. But if things are handled well, sensitively, sympathetically, non-judgmentally, they can look back and recognize that they were treated with dignity and respect, and that in turn can help them move forward with their lives positively. Thank you very much.